Welcome back to the corner of Whimsy and Bliss. It's Kina Renee again. And like I said in my previous video, because I've been cooped up in the house and I actually have a moment to get outside and enjoy some fresh air, even though it's cold and dreary and gray, as you can see behind me, it's still it's still necessary. I've been just in the house for too long and missing being outside. I have a few little tasks that I need to work on. So I figure now is as good a time as ever to take care of them. It's not too cold. I have my little, what do you call these things? I don't know. It's a somewhat of a puffer, but not. I've got my little, basically it's a jumpsuit, but it's made out of sweatsuit material, like jogger material. So it's a little bit warmer than something else I could be in. So I'm comfy. And what I'm going to be doing at the moment, because Walmart is playing with my emotions, I needed a few things to get my seed starting mix going. And they decided to send everything piece by piece. So I guess this is what you deal with when you have a mail order garden. I could have run over to the big box, but they didn't have the smaller portions of the vermiculite and perlite that I needed. I didn't need a really big bag right at the moment. I have the big bags out in the garage, but I just didn't feel like opening them because I don't have storage for them just yet. Excuse me. So I just ordered some small ones thinking they'll get here. I'll whip up my seed starting mix. I'll get my stuff potted up, get my little makeshift shoebox greenhouses going, and that'll be that. That didn't happen. So while I'm waiting, which hopefully they should be here sometime today, while I'm waiting, I'm going to just take care of a couple more things. So one thing that I really need to deal with, and it's one of those things that you don't have to do, but I'm extra in the sense that, you make the investment, you want to protect it. So I have these really fun stakes, labels. And what I'm going to do with them, because they're made out of bamboo, and I just love them, especially because my beds are so big. My beds are 6x6, and I don't want to lose track of what's going to be planted in them. And because the stakes are so long, I'll be able to reach in, reach all the way into the bed and plant and say what the actual plant is. Was it necessary? No. Could I have gotten away with, anything, literal popsicle sticks, the little plastic ones, anything? Sure, but these are cute and fun. So I'm going to I'm going to seal them basically with like an exterior UV type of sealer. And because the sealer isn't food grade, I am going to follow them up with Mod Podge. So this is the sealer that I'll be using to seal them and something else that I have. And then I'm going to follow them up with, I think I'll use the dishwasher safe Mod Podge because this is food safe. It's water based and it is food safe. And then I will let that dry. So I'll spray it, then basically take a paint pen and label it, then seal the bottom, the part that goes into the soil, with this Mod Podge, and then for the sake of exterior protection, follow it up with this one. Is it doing a lot? Yes, but I don't have anything else to do. It's either that or sit in the house, and I don't want to do that. Nothing's growing yet. My soil amendments aren't here. I can't get my seeds starting going, so I got to do something. The other thing that I'll be doing, and again, this is not something that is a necessity, but I'm kind of particular in this way when it comes to my tools and stuff. So I just got these hand tools, and I love them. They're really good quality. I already have a set that I've been using, and I love them because they are chip resistant. They're rust resistant. It's a solid wood handle. It has the leather cord for hanging. So it comes with this shovel, because I don't know what they're called, this little fork, a dibber, which I had been looking for a dibber for a long time, this little rake, and then the one that I really, really loved is this little weeder. So you just basically get in there under it and roll it back, and it just plucks the thing up. Now, why I'm sealing this set is because the first set that I bought, you know, as you're working in the garden, your hands, you're in gloves, the gloves are covered in soil, the soil is dark, and because it's wood, as I was grabbing each tool, the soil was just being ground into the wood, and it just looked horrible. It looked absolutely horrible. I couldn't stand looking at it. It looked dirty. It made me feel like there's something living in there. It gave me the same sensation of, you know, a wooden cutting board that a person cuts meat and stuff on. I'm like, oh geez, that's bacteria. You know, it's all kind of stuff growing in there. So I said, you know, I ordered a couple more sets because I really do like them, and they were on sale for Black Friday. It was one of the few things that I got. Everything that I got for Black Friday was not to contribute to consumerism, but it was necessities. It was things that I absolutely needed in order to make my life easier and to have a more successful and prolific garden. So there's my justification. So what I'm going to do with these tools is I'm going to take this box and I'm going to cut a couple of holes into it just to make it easier for the tools to stand up in the box. And then I am going to stand them up, spray them. I don't need to spray like the metal parts. I just need to really spray the wood. And I wonder if I should take the string out, but will I be able to get it back in? I don't know. But let me see. Can I just, nope, I gotta cut it. Sorry about the noise. Gotta cut it just to give it a little bit of room to stand up. There we go. Even if it's standing up sideways, that works. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. You know, these are not things that you have to do as a gardener. You don't need all this extra stuff. But I didn't have anything. I didn't have any tools or anything. Like I said in my previous video, I just woke up one day and decided now is the time for me to start my garden. And because of that, I didn't have anything. My garden is completely mail order. I have basically only purchased anything live, like gone into an actual physical store. The only things that I purchased in that way would be my whiskey barrels. I went in and got those from Home Depot. Anything else? I also I got my soil. I had to go into the store, into Lowe's, to deal with my soil because I attempted to order, you know, my soil in bulk from Home Depot, and they just kept screwing it up. They're the people that they use for their fulfillment, their shipping or delivery, whatever you want to call it. They kept trying to deliver, you know, 4 pallets of soil into a subdivision using only like a flatbed, you know, not even, they didn't even bring a forklift. And so they wanted to just drop off 4 pallets of soil on the curb. And I'm like, my HOA is not going to like that. So this is not going to work. So I had to basically refuse all my soil through Home Depot. And because they didn't seem to comprehend what I needed, I had to ultimately go into the store at Lowe's and explain what I needed, explain, the subdivision and all of that fun stuff. And it had to be delivered on with the forklift and, all of those things. And, thank goodness they were able to make it happen. But yeah, so aside from the soil and aside from the actual whiskey barrels, also the 2 trash cans that I used for my compost to start my DIY compost bins, everything else I had to order in. And it's been kind of a pain because you have to wait and I'm impatient. And when I have a few minutes here and there, I hope to be able to, get a lot of things accomplished. But when you're waiting on orders and stuff, it makes it kind of impossible for you to, make good use of those few moments you have in between your regular, day-to-day things. So that's where I am. I'm waiting on my amendments, my vermiculite and my perlite, so I can finish up my mix. And, that's another thing that I tend to make things harder on myself. Could I have just purchased seed starting mix? Sure. Could I have purchased potting soil? Yeah. But I look at it like the volume that I need. It makes more sense for me to make it myself, because if I had to purchase, a potting soil that I would use for not only my growing, because basically I'm growing in raised beds. So technically potting soil is what I would use for growing in raised beds. If I had to purchase that soil, I would purchase Fox Farms Coco Loco, because my growing medium of choice is coconut coir or coconut coir. Let your girl know how you say that. Is it coir, or coir? Anyway, COIR, however you pronounce it. My growing medium of choice is coconut coir. And the only potting soil that I have found that had the nutrients, the inoculants, and the growing medium with coconut coir has been Fox Farms Coco Loco. Everything else has peat moss. I don't personally enjoy using peat moss because I feel like the soil is always hydrophobic, meaning it's very, very dry. It seems to be very resistant to hydration, to taking in water. And, when you're dealing with these raised beds, you really have to be on top of that to make sure your plants are healthy and properly hydrated. So Coco Loco would be my choice, but it's quite literally $40. $40 for one bag of soil, which is granted 2 cubic feet. But to put it in perspective, I have some green stalks that I have to fill, and I'm kind of waiting to do those until the spring because I don't need them right at the moment. Also, I'm hoping to catch the Coco Loco on sale, because for the green stalks, I have the leaf green stalks, and for the leaf, which is the 7 tier, it requires 5, so basically 0.75 cubic feet of soil per tier, which equates to roughly about, I'm going to call it 5.5 cubic feet of soil to fill all the tiers. So to put it in perspective with purchasing Coco Loco, that would mean I'd be purchasing, let's just say I would need 6 cubic feet of Coco Loco, which would be the equivalent of 3 bags, which is $40 per bag times 3. I don't want to spend that much for filling up my green stock. So I'm going to either wait for it to go on sale, because I'm frugal that way. And let me just kind of stop there. I say that I'm frugal that way, which it sounded ridiculous coming out of my mouth. When you think about The things that I don't mind spending money for, like these, and going through the effort of searching for food safe, waterproof methods of sealing them, and all of that silliness, that's it's kind of a waste of money. But in the long run, it will pay off because I'll get to use these for long periods of time. I am planning on painting, using the paint pen to label them. So that's going to be more permanent, but I look at it this way. I'm most likely going to plant year after year the exact same things. So I don't mind making a permanent investment in these labels by, using the paint pen for them. But anyway, so to go back to the soil, it's one of those things. Could I pay the $40 per bag? Sure, but I don't want to. I rather use the money for other things, especially when you can make the soil. The whole premise for the green stock soil is it needs to be light, fluffy, airy, and it needs to have some nutrients. So I know that I can do that by mixing it up with my own coconut coir, adding some worm castings, some vermiculite, some perlite. I would also add maybe like a starter fertilizer, like a espoma biotone. I'd probably add just a little bit of very well sifted compost, like aged compost. Some other things that I would beef up the soil with would be like a mycorrhiza, just for the added benefits. Maybe a little azomite, just for those trace minerals that plants need. But I have those kind of things on hand, so it wouldn't be that big of an issue to mix it up myself for that particular quantity. And then of course, when you have 4 green stalks and you need the equivalent of 24 cubic feet of Coco Loco, I don't want to spend that kind of money. I rather, again, reinvest in my fun stuff. Now, these particular tools, I've been using the first set that I bought for over a year now. I've had no issues. Again, no rust and no chipping. None of the screws or anything have come out. The wood has held up, considering it, all of the soil and everything got ground into the grains. That's what wood does. The leather straps have held up. They've been great, really good quality. But I want to protect that. I want to protect the investment, which is why I'm doing this. So I'm going to give this stuff a little bit of a shake and just start spraying. Let's see if I can walk and chew gum and get a couple more holes for my labels done while I'm shaking this up. Is that annoying? Is that problematic to hear the shaking on camera? If so, I'm sorry. I don't have a lot of time, my work schedule, the demands of my work. I have an elderly puppy. I have a senior Yorkie who is, I fear, nearing the end of his journey, and he requires quite a lot of care, and he tends to wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning needing to go potty or wanting auntie to come and cuddle and snuggle and give him some more water or a treat, or he's just been very demanding lately. So I haven't been getting a lot of sleep. And then of course, we're at the end of the year at work. So we're trying to wrap up the year with all of the reviews and everything that I have to do for the team that I manage. And it's just a lot of responsibilities in my real life. So I don't get a lot of time to come and have fun in my garden anymore. And then of course it's cold and there's nothing really growing. Like I have a few grow bags that I put some cold hardy flowers and like herbs and stuff in, just so I could have something green growing at some point. So I have some pansies, violas, calendulas, and I had a few nasturtiums that were in there thinking that they would make it, but they're struggling in the cold also. I threw in some chives, and I believe there may be some chamomile seeds in there also. And then I have a couple of the larger grow bags. I think they're 20-gallon grow bags. I threw in some kale seeds and a couple of broccoli and cauliflower in a couple of bags. A cauliflower in one bag and broccoli in another bag, because you know those plants get big and I don't want to overcrowd them. So I threw them in there with some flowers and some herbs. I have a couple bags that are just herbs, cold hardy herbs. So, you know, it's so cold though. And I know that a lot of them need the cold to germinate, but it just doesn't feel like anything is really happening because we have no sun. What you see is what we get this time of the year. So, you know, I'm hopeful that these plants will do something, which is also why I'm taking the extra measure, like I talked about in my previous video, to try and get some winter sowing, basically, is what I'm going to be doing. I do plan on planting one or two of my beds. I was thinking maybe doing one with just garlic and shallots, because I know garlic doesn't really like to share its growing space. It doesn't really play well with others. So I was thinking maybe just do like the garlic and the shallots, and then do another bed with the cold tolerant plants, like the, you know, leafy greens, the lettuce, the kales, the broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi. I need to grow some collards and mustards, and I really just want to grow tatsoi because I think it's a beautiful plant. I've never even eaten tatsoi, but if it's like a mustard green, I love mustard green, so I think I would be okay with that. But you know, I got to get those things started and hope that we get something. Hopefully we won't have a terribly cold and frigid winter this year. Although the last couple of years, let's see, we moved back here in 2022. That year we had snow and ice the first part of November. The second year, same thing. So we had that cold front that came through, which basically brought our first frost date, and that would have been on November 10th. Since then, we've gotten down as low as, let's see, one night we got down to like, I want to say like 24, which is super cold for northern Alabama. And I would imagine even for cold hardy plants, that's super cold. And so I'm a little bit alarmed, I'm concerned rather, with how the plants are going to fare, because, you know, I don't have row covers and all of that stuff, which I should probably, I mean, I've ordered everything else and I'm taking the time to do this silliness. Why haven't I gotten the row covers, the frost protection and all of that? So maybe that'll be my next order, to get some, get enough to cover up the beds and maybe cover up my rack. I'm going to be bringing out my rack for my seedlings and putting it over there so that it'll be in proximity to a cord, to an outlet, so I can plug in my incandescent Christmas lights to kind of warm it up where it needs to, you know, just to give it a little something once everything germinates. But maybe that's what I need to do. Go ahead and get the row covers just so I can give these plants a chance. So I am now going to attempt to seal these things up, which I doubt they're going to dry very quick, because It's so cold. So I'll just turn you around so you can see what I'm doing. Let's see. It's so cold. The spray, you know what? I should probably read the instructions on this. And I'm normally an instructions person, but aren't you supposed to have ideal temperatures for this kind of stuff? Am I wasting my time? Let's see what the can says. Even with these giant glasses, I still can't see. Is there an ideal temperature? I just need to spray it and then I'll take it back in the house. Let it dry there. Ooh, temperatures between 50 and 90. Painting conditions. Use outdoors in a well-ventilated area, such as an open garage. Use when temperature is between 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius, and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius. And the humidity is below 65 to ensure... Okay, we're going back in the house. If I can get this thing open. Okay, there we go. Okay, is it a little dot I have to line it up to? Hopefully it still works. I have had this for a little bit. The crazy shenanigans that I get myself into just because I'm bored and I hate being stuck in the house. I'd be willing to subject myself to this kind of cold for something that is utterly not unnecessary. But whatever, it's fun. And these labels and everything are going to last. Let's see, can you see? Give them a light coat. Because I want my legs to last. They're super cute. Oops. So cold. That stuff is just totally dripping off of the wood handles, but we're going to keep trying. Then I'll run them back in the house. Totally unnecessary, but in the scheme of, you know, protecting your investment, I'm all for it. You know, even my paintbrushes, when I'm painting furniture, I invest in good brushes. Like I like I like a good brush. I like a real wood handle. And I like to take care of it so that I have years and years and years of use. And you would think it's a paintbrush. It's supposed to get messy. It's supposed to have paint on it. Well, yeah, but it doesn't have to look crazy. Like all the handles don't have to look crazy like that. You can still take care of your stuff. Even my vehicle's older, but I look at it like I spent a lot of money for it, keeping it maintained all those years. You know, I'm gonna keep it. I told myself when I bought this house, when I decided I was ready to purchase another house, you know, I kind of wanted a new car, and I went back and forth. Do I want the new car, or what do I want to do? But I told myself the car is still perfectly functional. It's still a good car. Still runs well, performs well, and all those things. I didn't need a new car. I wanted to have a house more than I wanted the new car. So, I bought the house. And, you know, it just speaks to taking care of the things you invest in, because if you do, then they will last you and they'll continue to perform for you. And so that is what all of this is about. Just protecting the investment. So I'll get years and years and years of use out of it. And at some point, you know, some company may send me a product that they want me to try. And I'd love to do it. I'd love to be able to do that and give honest feedback. I believe, reviews and tutorial or testimonials and all of that stuff is a very important part of the buying process. I know that helped me. Those type of reviews helped me tremendously when I was purchasing, when I was deciding on which raised beds and which, obelisk and which trellises and everything that I would be using. It came in very handy, excuse me, to have honest feedback from other buyers. So, even if someone were to say, hey, this is the top of the line of everything imaginable, would you give us your honest opinion? I'd say, sure, I'll give my honest opinion, but I would still fall back to, these tried and true, and I would stand behind the quality that I have experienced working with them in the year that I've been working with them, using them. Because it's, and these weren't very expensive. I think the set was maybe $40 for all of them, which I think is really good considering, like I said, no chip, water and rust resistant. It's going in dirt, and should I care about it being dirty? No, but I kind of do. I want my garden to be beautiful. I want the tools I use to be beautiful. I don't want my labels and tags and things all chewed up and looking crazy. This is not just a utilitarian garden. I want it to be beautiful. I want the things that I put in it to be lovely and give me joy. I'm the corner of Whymsy and Blyss after all. So I want things to give me that feeling. I'm always chasing that dopamine rush to help me stay focused. And this is just one of those tasks. Like these simple little tasks, they scratch that itch that I had been longing for since it's been so cold and dreary. So, little things like this, you got to have a win every now and again. It doesn't have to always be like this big, production. I had those moments throughout the summer and everything too, when we finally got all the beds built and placed and filled and the trellises and everything started going in place. My compost, when I started that, I think I'll ask you guys, what is some of the most rewarding things that you've experienced in the garden? For me, it was my compost bins. And how that came about was the first year that we moved into this house, total novice, had no idea what we were doing. We tried to plant everything up in terracotta pots. We had gotten beautiful pots at Ollie's. If you guys have an Ollie's discount store, shout out to Ollie's. They came through with really fun garden supplies, but they had really beautiful pots. So stocked up on the pots thinking, ooh, we'll plant all of our veggies in there. Not knowing that companion planting is a must. You got to do something to deal with the pest. You got to have the right soil and, to deal with the pots because they dry out faster, especially in this Alabama heat. So it was all these things. So we planted all this stuff. Everything failed. The pest ate everything. It was just a nightmare what we were trying to do with these, pots and everything the first year. So fast forward, we finally got through that growing season. That was a failure. And I said, well, I was reading something that basically said how you keep your plants healthy or how you keep the pest away is by keeping your plants healthy. And you keep your plants healthy not by giving them more and more and more fertilizer. Yes, fertilizer has a place in the garden, but it's not. It isn't necessarily for health. How you keep the plants healthy is by, one, making sure the watering is what it needs to be. You can't overwater. You can't underwater. You want to keep everything pruned and deadheaded, and make sure that you're addressing any type of rot or disease or anything like that. But the thing that really stood out to me was the best way to keep your plants healthy was with compost. And not even the type that you would buy in the big box, the things that you are composting in your local environment, whatever pests and microorganisms that would normally live on your property in your environment is what your compost needed to be comprised of. And so that made sense to me. And I started looking around like, well, this property is barren. There isn't any plant material. There's no trees. There's no leaves. I wanted to do leaf mold. We didn't have any of that. What we did have was all those failed plants. Everything that was in the ceramic pots that we planted that didn't do well, I threw all of that in the compost bin. So I went and got the big garbage cans and basically drilled a bunch of holes in them, top, bottom, sides, drilled a bunch of holes in them, and I dumped all of that old soil. I sorted through everything to make sure it was nothing living in the soil, like any of the big pesky bugs. Obviously the microorganisms were still there. There were still some roots and things like that that was still feeding the soil. So those things I felt okay with leaving, and I went ahead and threw them in the compost. And I spent the entire summer basically chopping at it, like, building it up, putting more, kitchen scraps, cardboard. I'm still unpacking boxes for when I moved here. So in the boxes was like a lot of the brown packing paper. So I put all of that in there. So I would alternate my browns and greens, and I would turn the compost. I added something from Estoma called a compost starter, and it basically was, inoculating it and adding, beneficial microbes and all of those things. Added some of that, made sure to keep it watered, turned it as best that I could, because I had so many failed pots. I had enough soil and organic material to fill 2 trash cans, and I want to say I don't know how many gallons. I'm really bad about that. Working on that, friends. But 2 big trash cans, lidded trash cans that you could get at the big box stores. Filled 2 of those up and basically went on about feeding it and turning it and watering it and all of those things. Fast forward 1 growing season. Well, let's say we started that in, I want to say April. We started feeding and building the compost in April. April 2025. It's now December of 2025, and there is black gold in those bins. That has been my most rewarding thing that I've done in the garden, aside from, filling the beds. That's been super fun. Mastering growing from seed has been incredible. And forgive me, I shouldn't say mastering, but getting the hang of growing from seed has been awesome. Finally getting the layout that I wanted for everything has been really awesome as well. But that compost, just knowing that, having that compost ready to feed my beds, to feed my soil, not feed my plants, feed my soil, because that's how you keep your plants healthy. It's about feeding your soil. We grow soil, and the soil that we're growing feeds those plants. And that's the thing that most gardeners don't keep in mind. I would have done the same. I did the same. The first year I grabbed a few bags of the pink stuff in the bag from Walmart and threw it in some pots, threw some seeds in there, and expected miracles. That stuff was so full of huge chunks of rock and, wood pieces. Like the seedlings, there was no way those seedlings were going to make it, in that growing environment. So, lesson learned. But the fact that that material, it started its decomposition while in the pots, while everything was growing. It finished its decomposition in the compost bins. I've since gotten some tumblers as well. And I basically, everything that I grew in bags and pots this year, once it finished, anything that was healthy, obviously, I didn't feel comfortable with throwing I didn't feel comfortable with throwing any type of tomato plants or roots or anything like that in the compost because while I didn't have any type of root, not nematodes or anything that I could see, everything looked really healthy. I just didn't want to chance it. I didn't throw any squash plants in there either because we did have squash bugs. We had leaf-footed bugs. We had stink bugs. And we did have, we had an occasion where there were some some of the vine borers. I could see evidence that they were present. We got tons of squash. So I guess they didn't have a chance to kill the plant. And I think that happened because I planted them so late. I didn't get my garden started until like July. So, we went through July, August, September, and October. They were present, but not as bad as they, as bad as they could have been had I started everything sooner without any kind of covers or any type of organic repellents, if you will. I learned later in the growing season that I could use peppermint oil. What I ended up using is I used the peppermint Castile soap. I did use the neem oil. I used hydrogen peroxide for different things. I look at it like this: spraying and amending and, dealing with your pest pressure is such a personal thing that everyone has to come to grips with. Just the same way that folks have to come to grips with using plastic in their gardens. Like whatever you choose to do for your garden, as long as it makes sense for you and, your belief system, then so be it. If you don't believe in using fertilizers or if you prefer synthetic over organic, like the point is you have to do what you have to do for your garden. In my case, I had to use something to deal with the pest pressure. I tried to be as organic as I could be with it because I had so few beneficial insects because it was so late in the season and it took a lot of effort to get them here. I had to go and purchase some flowers until my flowers started to bloom. I did have to use fertilizers to get my flowers to start blooming. Once they did, they took off, and the backyard was, it was so amazing. They were just everywhere. I loved it. I would look out my office window, and because I work from home, I look out my office window and just see them out there, see the hummingbirds zooming around, and the big fat. These bees were so big and fat, I could see them from my second story window, and it was amazing. But I wouldn't have gotten any blooms if I hadn't fertilized them. I had to go really heavy on, the phosphorus and things like that. Basically, the PK of the NPK, I had to go heavy on that to get everything to start blooming. But once it did, it really attracted all the different types of bees. We had some of the wasps, we had ladybugs, we had, the pesky ones, but we had others, like we had frogs, we had grasshoppers. I happened to come out one day ready to start pruning my poor zinnias. And the the grasshoppers decided to make my zinnias their special time. They decided to try and procreate in my zinnias. And they're looking at me like, are you friend or foe? Like, you see we're busy here, and I'm going, you're in my zinnias. But, it was fun seeing them there because it told me that my environment, my ecosystem was healthy. And so I say all that to say I had to use some fertilizers. I I had to use like bagged compost and things like that because that's all I had available at the time. My compost was still breaking down and, doing its thing. But, I had to make it make sense. I had to protect my plants. I had to use the, insecticidal soaps and things like that because I put all this effort into this garden. I couldn't let it be taken over by pests. And if I had done nothing because I wasn't prepared, like I didn't have all of the companion plants, I didn't have a ton of herbs in place to fight them. I didn't have enough flowers to bring in all of the different predatory pests that killed the pests that were eating my plants. So I had to take care of them. I had to do what was right in my garden. So, again, all of those things are so personal. Just like this little project is very personal. It's one of those things that I just like doing. I just want to make sure that, one, my garden is very personalized. This is so much of a thing that I would do that most people wouldn't do. Most people wouldn't see the value in doing this. But I do. And, there may be some people that have these types of products, but, you know, this is my interpretation. This is how I plan on using them. So you'll see them in the garden, and I'll have everything, have all the names and everything written real cute, and it's just gonna be fun. It's the corner of Whimsy and Bliss, and these are the things that make me happy. And they get me excited about being out in the garden. Um, you have to do those things, especially when you're working every day and life is hectic, and you know I sometimes you just got to do these things. And I think that's partly why I love gardening so much, because it really does remind me of my childhood, and it allows me to be a kid again. It allows me to come out and play. I was one of those kids that I was an only child for a very long time. My brother and I are 7 years apart. And in the time that I was an only child, my mother was super protective. She didn't really let me go out and play. She didn't want me to fall and get scraped up. And little girls don't have, scratches and scrapes on their knees. You have to be careful. You have to be a lady. You have to be dainty, which, I've always been tall and big. So, dainty and me, obviously I'm not, this crazy masculine individual, but what she wanted me to be was this little princess. And I liked being outside. I wanted to go out and play tetherball and jump rope and ride bikes and, all that stuff with my friends. But, she kept me indoors for a long time. I had every single book I ever wanted, all the inside toys, the puzzles and games, all that stuff. It was great. It was a great upbringing. Honestly, I don't blame her. I'd probably be the same way if I were a parent. But my prized possession was my dollhouse. My Barbies were living in style. And they had the Corvettes and, the buses and the vans and awesome furniture and outfits and stuff. And I think that's what I am doing here. I think this home, this garden, the way that I do things is me reliving my youth and giving me that childlike whimsy. And when you've lived a life of caring for others and being accountable for others, like I've worked in corporate America for my entire adult life since I was 19. So basically over 30 years I've been in corporate America, been in management for a very long time in one capacity or another. So I always have to account for someone else. I am a caregiver for my mother and, of course, now my senior pet. So there's always been a lot of nurturing and taking care of others. And you kind of lose some of that whimsy when you have to be so responsible. And I think that's what I'm experiencing in this garden, in this house, in my she shed, getting back to those happy moments, those fun moments, being able to play and tinker and create and build and all of those things. And so, while this task today was something that was totally unnecessary, it's fun. It gave me something to do outside. Um, and it's going to be awesome once I have a chance to sit and label everything. And once it's all out there, I'll remember these moments and the way that it made me feel. Like, I feel so happy right now. I'm cold now, so you can hear it in my voice. My voice is shaking now. Hands in the pockets. I'm cold now, so I'm going to go in very soon. But I'm just happy to have had that moment. And I'm so grateful to have this space, to have a home, to have a shed, to have a garden, to have awesome compost and fun tools and fun labels and, the creativity to want to do some of these things. So, yeah, get out there, get your little tasks done. It's okay. Get crafty with it, get thrifty with it. I was just at the thrift store the other day. I have some projects that I plan on working on with some of the things that I brought from the thrift store. That's another thing about being a gardener and a creative. It requires you to really solve problems and be creative with how you solve them. Like, I found flower pots and all kind of fun stuff at the thrift store. So I'm trying to save a little bit of money, which isn't really saving if it's something that you don't really need. I mean, we always need pots though, right? We always need that. So little things like that. I have a lot of DIY projects that I hope to introduce to the channel. I have some furniture that I'll be painting that I will be sharing along the journey as well. But yeah, so if my soil amendments show up sometime before it gets dark, I may pop back on and mix up my soil and get a few things planted up. I have to go and pick up some fish fertilizer, fish and kelp liquid fertilizer, and a little vodka because I have to do some things to prep for a fun plant that I plan on, or fun seed that I plan on planting in one of the beds. So, anyway, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for stopping by again. More to come from the corner of Whimsy and Bliss. Bye.